Yeah, it's been a minute since I posted a full show. I always use that in quotation marks because I post the individual segments. But I actually had done a full show, and I went to go upload it, and I did, and it's just sitting there. I need to delete it. And by the time I was like ready to put it together, new news broke. All the stuff in the video was kind of old. I just didn't feel like posting it. The Eagles made a trade for some cornerback. I'm not going to talk about it because it would be doing you a disservice. I don't know who he is. You don't know who he is. All those Instagram people, they don't know who he is. It's a minor deal, a very minor deal to get cornerback depth. Cool. The Eagles play a preseason game on Thursday. I think the best part about getting laid off from 97.5 is the fact that I no longer have to be dialed into the preseason. Stated before, I hate preseason. Everything. I hate that it's a thing. Nothing against Scott Graham, and I think that Ross Tucker does a really good job. I think he deserves more, but like I don't give a. Call me when the games matter. That is it. That is the only thing I care about when the games matter. Other than that, I'm just hoping to God that they get through healthy, and credit to the medical department because last season they were a very very healthy football team, but this is going to be a very very Phillies heavy show. Just a heads up. I can't think of any. I mean, there's nothing really going on with the Sixers too much. It's the downtime. I mean, this is the issue. Like, this is a prime example of why I didn't get in a Temple. I decided to start a sports podcast in the dog days. Genius move. But this is that time of the year where you're kind of just like hoping to God that like a good sports documentary comes out. You can kind of kill time because now the Phillies have made their moves. Is it good enough? We'll find out, obviously, but I have my doubts. It's still really, really concerning to me that they only have one legitimate major league outfielder. But the Duran stuff is cool. I know everyone's all hopped up on the Durantula. But yeah, it's gonna be a very, very Phillies heavy show, and then hopefully, more stuff will end up breaking throughout the week, and we can talk about it. This has always been a channel for me. This is always as if I've been doing this for 10 years, this channel that I created 4 months ago. But when I started it, it was always going to be like hey, I'm not going to fake it. If I don't give a fuck about the topic, I'm not going to act all of a sudden like I am faux outraged. And the month of August, is the faux outrage season. Whether it be television, radio, this is when people get really, really, really fake animated because there's nothing else going on. And for me, if there's nothing else going on, I'm just not going to post. And if that's a mistake, that's a mistake, but I'm not going to sit there and talk about, preseason football when I really don't care about it, preseason hockey, who, the Flyers goaltender situation should be like, do you really care about that when it's 99 degrees? Actually, that's a dumb thing to say because Flyers fans are horse with blinders. They're like, yeah, absolutely, we care about it. But yeah, so right now it's all Phillies. That's all I got. I never know how to end these things. Go Phillies, I guess. No, wait, no, I'm back. I have a gripe. Phillies team store. Went to the Phillies game for Jimmy Rollins night, as you guys know, huge Jimmy Rollins fan. And I went to the team store. I was told that they would have like Jimmy Rollins stuff there. They had nothing. That's not the gripe. The gripe is that when I went to the Jersey section, people that know me know, like, I'm a Jersey guy. I have like 30 of them, all different players. Like, you want a Ben Revere jersey? I got it. Mickey Moniak, no doubt. So I go to the Jersey section because I'm like, I would like a Christopher Sanchez jersey. When I was last year, they didn't have them. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they've rectified that. I mean, he's a Cy Young candidate. How could they not have Christopher Sanchez jerseys? They don't. No. They don't have Christopher Sanchez. There's plenty of Brandon Marsh. Plenty of that guy. No Christopher Sanchez. Okay. That's not really the problem, though. Max fucking Kepler? Who in their right mind is doing the orders down at Citizens Bank Park? Who sat there and said, okay, let's order Luzardo, check, obviously Harper, Realmuto, all the regular Schwarber. Yep. Let's get some Stott in there. Yep, he's got a fan base. Max Kepler. Huh. Haven't had a Max on the team in a while. That'll sell. Sanchez? Nah, we're good. Actually, let's have every pitcher but Sanchez. Because they do. They have Nola, they have Wheeler, they have Suarez, they have Luzardo, they have Walker. and they don't have Christopher Sanchez. Phillies, be better. Be better. That's embarrassing. Dude is having a Cy Young season and you don't have a Scherzer? This is a prime example. Like, this is what we're complaining about in August. But that's not a horrible thing, you know? Kind of a good thing if you're a Phillies fan. All right, I'll leave now. Well, there it is. The Philadelphia Phillies have made their move. They've acquired Jhoan Duran from the Minnesota Twins, and they gave up a lot. Now, the first prospect going in the deal is Mick Abel. If you followed my channel or you've followed anything I've written on allphly.com, you know that Mick Abel was my number one prospect likely to be traded at the deadline for a myriad of reasons, but the most is that they have no room for him next season. The other prospect in the deal I am shocked by. It is Eduardo Tait. He is the 18-year-old catcher who was just promoted to High A Jersey Shore, and that's to me that's a lot. Like, you're giving up a possible future all-star catcher. Granted, he's a ways away. He's 18 years old, but that was supposed to be your future of the organization in terms of a backstop. His extra base power was well on display this year. He was rostered in the futures game. I think he went 0 for 1 in the game, but represented for the Phillies. I'm just surprised is all. Now, it's not like I don't like the move. I do. And in previous years, I probably would have liked the move more. But knowing the way that this organization operates in terms of Dave Dombrowski and Rob Thompson, I'm kind of up in the air in it for a few reasons. But the main one is they don't know how to use closers. They haven't known how to use closers for years now. During Rob Thompson's tenure, he has had one true closer that he has gone to time in and time out. Time in and time out. Is that a phrase? Smash thumbs down for that. But he's had one guy that he goes, okay, you're my closer, and that was Craig Kimbrell. And Craig Kimbrell was an all-star that year, and the wheels fell off in the playoffs, but still, he was an all-star that year. And ever since then, it's been this BS closer by committee, including last year. Like, they trade for Carlos Estevez, and I can't stand Carlos Estevez, but they trade for him. He's an all-star closer, and what do? They start pitching him out of the 8th inning. Because it's, let's look at matchups. Let's look at closer by committee. The Phillies shouldn't even be in this position, let's be real. I mean, Dave Dombrowski goes bargain bin shopping. He gets Jordan Romano, and he's been horrible. And if there is one good thing about this deal, maybe it's the fact that we can finally get rid of Jordan Romano. We can rid ourselves of Jordan Romano. I hope. But this deal for me is going to go down to how they use him. If Duran comes in immediately and he is their closer and they're only pitching him out of the 9th inning in close games, okay, fine. And they go in the deep playoff run and they end up winning a World Series, I'm not going to give one you-know-what about Eduardo Tait. But if they do what they've done in the past, which is this ridiculous closer by committee, where Jhoan Duran comes in and in his first game he's pitching the 9th inning and in the second game he's pitching the 7th, because metrics and splits and numbers dictate that he would be better off pitching against these 3 guys than the 3 guys projected to be in the 9th inning, I'm going to lose it. And the sad part is that's what I'm expecting. That is exactly what I'm expecting from this move. Until I'm proven wrong by Rob Thompson and Dave Dombrowski into like putting the analytics down and putting the binders down and just going on, this is our 9th inning guy, then I'm looking at this deal like, you might have given up too much. Now, look, there isn't a prospect in the organization that I haven't fallen in love with, so use this as a huge grain of salt, okay? And with that said, most of the prospects that I've been like, man, this kid's going to be a stud, they haven't panned out. It's just the reality of baseball prospects. The futures game is littered with, I don't recognize half these names. So with that, keep that in mind. It's not like Eduardo Tait is coming up next year. They didn't give up Justin Crawford in the deal, who I think is Major League ready at this point. I just looked at Eduardo Tait as a guy that, like, with his bat, could be a real impact in this lineup down the line. But Dave Dombrowski's looking at it like, well, down the line, I don't have down the line. I got this year. All right, window's open, so let's use it this year, and we can always draft a catcher. They do have Aurelius Farabis, who now is the #1 catcher in A-ball for Clearwater, and he's shown spurts here and there. But this deal tells me 2 things, all right? The first is the fact that the Phillies addressed a need that they probably didn't need to They shouldn't have had to need. They needed to address it. They shouldn't have been put in this position because they failed during the offseason to acquire. Look at my kids are all excited about it because I put them in the bedroom. I was like, Daddy's got to record. They had to do this deal because they failed in the offseason to acquire any relief depth whatsoever, and they're sitting with a bullpen that is trash. And the second part is the fact that they're in a situation where JT Realmuto is like pretty much guaranteed to be back. And while I thought previously it might be a 3-year deal, you might be looking at like a 5-year deal at this point. So because of the fact that I thought, okay, JT Realmuto comes in 3 years. At that point, Eduardo Taid has come through the system. Maybe he's ready to take over the deal. Doesn't matter at this point. He's traded. At the end of the day, it's not like I dislike the deal because it's it was a need. It was the biggest need that they had at closer again. I'm frustrated as a Phillies fan because it's yet another deadline where they needed a closer. They went out and they got a closer, and it's going to come down to just how they use him. If they use him like the Minnesota Twins have used him, where he's got a 2 ERA, fine, great. If they don't, then I'm going to be pissed off. I don't care about losing McAble. I do care about losing Eduardo Taid. I thought they'd trade McAble. I thought they'd trade Gene Cabrera. But Eduardo Taid was on my list of like guys that I wouldn't trade. So to me, this package is a lot. But again, it's not going to matter if they're having a parade down Broad Street in November. So at the end of the day, they needed it. They got it done. I thought they paid a price, but you've seen what some of these relievers have gone for at the deadline. The price is a lot. But I'm kids. I'll tell you right now, real quick. Parenting is a cult. It's a cult, absolute cult. Because everybody loves asking, when are you having kids? When are you gonna have kids? And then you finally announce like, oh, we're having a kid, and it's like, oh, buckle up. You don't know what you're in for. And then they're having a blast. Anyway, go Phillies. Well, the MLB trade deadline is come and gone, and the Phillies got Jhoan Duran and Harrison Bader, the center fielder from the Twins, in a deal that sent Hendry Mendez and some other guy that probably never going to hear from again to Minnesota. I'll get to Hendry Mendez in a little bit in case you're unaware of who he is. But let's not make this move out to be anything more than what it actually is. The Phillies traded for right-handed Brandon Marsh. That's it. I've already seen it. I've already seen the tweets where we, as a fan base, convince ourselves that this is more. Convince ourselves that this is a really good move. Convince ourselves because of, bullshit, sabermetric stacks, XVLORP, Quarsci, and, Batman symbol ampersand, and all that shit. We look at it and we go, oh my God, this move is great. And you know what? It's like Groundhog Day because we did the same thing last year with Austin Hayes, and I think we all remember how that went. Granted, Austin Hayes was injured, but he also wasn't very good for the Phillies. We do this, and I don't blame any fan base for necessarily doing it. You don't want to sit there and go like, holy shit, that is it? But that's the reality. At least for me, I sat there and went, oh my God, that's it. I've never seen a president of baseball operations fall in love with mediocre outfielders like Dave Dombrowski. 2 years ago, or was it maybe 3 years ago at this point? I think it was 3 years ago. He trades for Brandon Marsh, former top prospect from the Angels. Phillies think they can untap his potential. They can work with his swing. And at this point, we know what Brandon Marsh is. He is a dime a dozen outfielder that cannot play against lefties, that plays a really good defensive left field, not a very good defensive center field. And he is somebody that pretty much every Major League Baseball team has. He's expendable. And this season, they go out and they sign Max Kepler. And we all know what Max Kepler is. So you go out and I guess if you combine Harrison Bader and you combine Brandon Marsh, you get an everyday center fielder, maybe. But he's hitting .258. He's got 12 home runs. He's got 10 stolen bases. He is right-handed Brandon Marsh. So for all the tweets out there that you'll see, and for anybody out there that's a Phillies fan that is going to be over the moon about this and do backflips and pull hamstrings, trying to convince themselves this is the impact bat, you're kidding yourself. It's not. This is right-handed Brandon Marsh. In Jhoan Duran, they got an impact pitcher. They got what should be an impact closer, a shutdown ninth inning. You are winning the game. Going into the ninth inning, the game is essentially over. As I said when I released the reaction video to that deal, though, it all depends on how they use them. They traded for Carlos Estevez last year, and all of a sudden Carlos Estevez is coming out in the 8th inning. He's coming out in the 7th because that's what the metrics dictated. If they end up using Duran like the Minnesota Twins use Duran, okay, great move. And as I said in that video, if you end up having a parade down Broad Street, no one's really caring what happened with Eduardo Tait. You end up getting a closer under team control, great. My problem with this is they go out and they get Duran, and then Dave Dombrowski comes out and he says, yeah, we're done addressing relief help. What? Come again? You're done addressing... Why are you done addressing relief help? Why exactly? Do you think your bullpen is good? Because I assure you, sir, it's not. What annoys me the most about this trade deadline for Dave Dombrowski is he put himself in this position. He put himself exactly where he was when he made these deals. He made his bed, he had to lie in it. And he ends up giving up one of the best catching prospects in the game because he didn't adequately add during the offseason. He didn't sign, his big addition was Jordan Romano, who shouldn't even be on the team at this point. He put himself here. Max Kepler, he put himself here by doing this. I would rather have Justin Crawford up than trade for Harrison Bader. It's not like I'm in love with Hendry Mendez, which, by the way, Hendry Mendez was a guy that 12th ranked prospect in the organization. They acquired him from the Brewers and right before the 2024 season in that offseason. And when the 2024 season started, he wasn't even in the top 30. With the Phillies organization, he has risen fast. He started off the season in high A Jersey Shore. He made it up to Reading. He never slowed down. I do weekly prospect updates for allphly.com. Hendry Mendez was somebody that routinely showed up in those because he was having a really, really good season. I'm not surprised that he got traded because he's organizational depth for the Phillies. They just have better outfield prospects that project to be better players at the major league level than Hendry Mendez. So, yeah, okay, trade him. I like the return for the Twins a lot, but you shouldn't have had to even give him up. Hendry Mendez should have been somebody that you used to acquire like a Tanner Banks person, which was a deal that I liked last year. And then they ended up giving up a decent prospect in William Bergolla to get Tanner Banks. He really wasn't used that much last year, but now he's used a lot because of that Jose Alvarado suspension. Jose Alvarado will be back before the end of the season, but he's not going to be eligible to pitch in the playoffs. So you go out there and you get a closer. At least, God, I hope that they use him as a closer. And that's it. And you're content with that. How? Now, I have to be fair. They didn't just get Duran. They signed David Robertson. We don't know what we're getting in David Robertson, though. I really hope that David Robertson is really, really good for the Phillies. And when he comes up, I really, really hope that they end up saying to Jordan Romano, thanks for your time, deuces. I have my doubts. I think the reality is that when David Robertson joins this team, they will send David Roberts down. They will send Seth Johnson down, and they will keep Jordan Romano on this team when it is clear to everybody with 2 eyeballs and 1 brain cell that this dude is cooked. He is horrible. Every time he comes in, the other team is racing to the bat rack. They are frothing at the mouth because this dude cannot pitch anymore. But Dave Dombrowski, and it's not just him, it's a lot of GMs in all sports, doesn't want to look foolish by having his big off-season addition to the bullpen. He doesn't want to look foolish by releasing that guy, so we're going to keep him on the roster and we're going to convince ourselves that, no, he's really turning a corner in August. So you go out, you make the one move, fine. On the surface level, these moves aren't horrible, I guess, but when you look around at baseball and you see what other teams did, and you see the Mets load up, and they go get Ryan Helsley, and they go out and they get Rogers from the Giants, and they trade for Cedric Mullins. And that's a team that's going all in. And your president of baseball ops is sitting there waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting, as he does every trade deadline, for the prices to drop. And he ends up giving up one of the top catching prospects in the game and a pretty good outfield prospect. And he gets out of it a closer under team control. Good move. No complaints there. Just pray to God he uses them correctly. And right-handed Brandon Marsh. I'm not pumped about this. Not at all. It got to the point where, like, when I saw the Harrison Bader move, I would rather just not even make that move, bring up Justin Crawford, and have him play center field. Now, the sad part is, when they do bring up Justin Crawford, they're going to platoon him. And they're going to make sure that he only plays against, righty or a lefty. God forbid he plays against, because that's just what teams do nowadays. And it is frustrating as hell. None of this is going to matter. And we can all laugh at this. If fast forward to November, we are talking about a World Series parade. It's not lost on me that in 2008, no one thought the move of Joe Blanton was a good move. I loved it, but for the most part, like, no Phillies fans were pumped because you wanted CC Sabathia. And Joe Blanton goes undefeated. There's a chance Harrison Bader goes out there and, he hits 300 for this team, and I'll eat crow. I have no problem admitting I'm wrong. No problem. And I pray to God that Harrison Bader's arrival means no more Max Kepler and means even less Brandon Marsh. But at the same time, I have my doubts. I look at this trade deadline like the most Dave Dombrowski trade deadline of all time. They go out there, they get a mediocre outfielder, and they get a really good reliever. And that's pretty much what they've done the past 3 seasons. So this isn't a big surprise. It's just a frustration level for me as a Phillies fan looking at it, because I'm like, dude, you put yourself here. It didn't have to be like this. But you went to Five Below looking for an outfielder in the offseason and looking for a closer in the offseason, and you end up with Max Kepler and Jordan Romano, both of which should not be on this team. Both of which will probably remain on this team. And that, to me, is the most frustrating part of this trade deadline. Because it didn't have to be here. And yet here we are. Those prospects that were traded, Eduardo Tait, Mick Abel, Hendry Mendez, throw in the other guy that will be a Long Island Duck before you know it, all those guys should have been used to acquire other pieces, because this should have been addressed correctly in the offseason, and it failed. It was an abject failure. Period, point blank. This isn't to say that Dave Dombrowski has been a failure as the Phillies president of baseball ops, GM, whatever you want to call him. He ends up signing Schwarber, home run. I believe he was the Wheeler signing as well. Nick Castellanos. I can't really give him credit for Trey Turner, because Trey Turner was Bryce Harper. So it's not like every move he's made has been bad. But when it comes to trade deadlines, they've been lackluster. And this, to me, is a prime example of that. So yeah, I'm pretty frustrated. But hey, let me know what you think. Hopefully, as I said, hopefully it doesn't even matter. Hopefully we can all laugh about this and my outrage right now come November. But very frustrated. But again, let me know what you think in the comments. Do me a favor, subscribe button is important. You can share it if that'd be cool. Like, that's the thumbs up button. Dislike, you guys know where the buttons are. I'm going to go watch Twisted Metal. It's on Paramount Plus. It's really good. After Monday night's Phillies game, which saw them win 13-3 against the Baltimore Orioles, Kyle Schwarber now has 40 home runs, 94 RBIs, and we just started August. He leads all of baseball with the RBI stat. He is second in all of baseball in home runs, only 2 behind Cal Raleigh. He leads the National League in home runs. He is firmly cemented as an NL MVP candidate. It is getting to the point where you will hear MVP chants come September at Citizens Bank Park. And the fear, I think, with a lot of Phillies fans is, oh shit, this guy is really good. He's having an MVP year. And he's a free agent. The horror. Immediately, as a Philadelphia sports fan, you're preconditioned to wait for the other shoe to drop. It is just a natural reaction. For me, that's what happens when you lose 4 straight NFC Championship games. You're waiting for something bad to happen. I am here to tell you nothing bad is going to happen. Kyle Schwarber will be back in a Phillies uniform next season. You can book it. I am more confident on this than probably any other proclamation I could make. Kyle Schwarber will 100% be back. It is just a matter of how many years and how much money. And I'm not just saying this because I'm Billy Mumfrey from Seinfeld, a cockeyed optimist. No, I'm saying this because the track record of John Middleton is that he has the worst poker face in all of baseball, possibly in all of sports. There's two things that John Middleton wants: to win and a trophy. He likes winning a lot. He also really wants that trophy. He is quoted as saying, "I want my trophy back." The reason I say, though, that he has the worst poker face is he is famous for, a couple off seasons ago. I mean, at this point, it's probably 6 off seasons ago. Him going to the winter meetings and the quote of, "I'm going to spend stupid money." We all remember the 2020 pandemic season. JT Realmuto is entering his final year of his contract. You've got Bryce Harper hitting home runs and signaling up to the owner's box, "Sign him." You've got the Fandemic crew who is going nuts outside of the ballpark. John Middleton goes to thank them, knowing full well what they're going to say, and every single one of them was like, "You got to bring JT back." And what happened? 5-year deal. They brought JT back. He caved. And by the way, JT Realmuto will be back, and the prime example of that is Rafael Marchand can barely get on the field. They don't have another option. They just traded their best catching prospect in Eduardo Taillib to get Jhoan Duran, even though Eduardo Taillib was probably 3 to 4 years away, but still, they trade him. He'll be back. My point of all of this is to say that he is willing to spend. He is willing to put his money where his mouth is. If you remember, the Phillies signed Kyle Schwarber first. They signed him to a 4-year deal. They signed Nick Castellanos second to a 5-year deal. It was a really good offseason for Dave Dombrowski. He hit it out of the ballpark. This offseason has been the opposite, for me at least. You didn't get a deal done with Schwarber in the offseason, and every single game it seems like the amount that it's going to cost you keeps going up. Your big signings were Max Kepler and Jordan Romano. And I don't necessarily blame Dombrowski for that, because I think what people fail to realize is a lot of the extensions that he gave out kicked in this season. So while they didn't make a big splash in free agency, and they made the Luzardo trade, that was really their big move in the offseason. But most of their free agent signings, they had to be going to 5 below because of the fact that the Wheeler contract extension kicked in, the Sanchez contract extension kicked in. Like, these contracts kicking in all of a sudden, it put their payroll to a point where he had to go bargain bin shopping. The problem is he picked wrong. The biggest problem, though, with the offseason was the fact that he did have Schwarber and his agent negotiating and playing hardball, and he went, "Yeah, you know what, we'll wait. We'll wait till the season starts." Well, now he probably went from a $25 to $30 million player in that range, and now he's playing himself to a $30 to $35 million player in that range. But still, it's not your money. It's not my money. We don't really care, do we? No. This is why Bryce Harper took 13 years, $330 million. A lot of people will focus on that number, $330 million. And what they fail to realize is he took that number and that year because as soon as he signed it, the deal was a steal. He's getting $25 million. Like, he's a $40 million player, but he took that contract to give the Phillies a chance to contend. He realized, okay, I can't be taking this massive chunk of our payroll up. I can live with $25 million. Shockingly, I know. What I'm going to do is I'm going to sign that contract, and I'm going to take $25 million, knowing full well that I'm going to be double that in a couple of years or so. But I'm going to do that because I want to win a championship. I know I'm kind of getting off on the rails here a little bit because I'm kind of free-flowing, but the reason why the Texas Rangers had to trade Alex Rodriguez way, way, way back in the day was because they gave him that large contract. He took up so much of their payroll that they couldn't contend. Bryce Harper learned from that mistake, signed a $330 million deal. He's only making $25 million, and the reason is he wanted to set the Phillies up so that they could re-sign a guy like JT Realmuto, and they could be in a position to re-sign a guy like Kyle Schwarber. Now, look, this all depends on how far they go. If they make a little bit of a deep run in the postseason, and hopefully it ends with a parade, obviously, but if they make a deep run and they come up short, then it's just a matter of how fast John Middleton just slaps his checkbook on the table and says, we came this close, we're going to finish the job. We're going to run it back essentially with the same team, and now we have a closer. He's going to end up paying for it, and he's going to end up paying a luxury tax. My question then becomes, do the Phillies entertain trades for Aaron Nola in the offseason? Because and I've said this before on John Marks' show when he's had me on. If you're wondering why the Phillies haven't signed Kyle Schwarber, it's because they used the Kyle Schwarber money and they signed Aaron Nola. I mean, like, if you look at how much Kyle Schwarber was about to demand, which again was, 25 to 30 million, I think Aaron Nola's getting like 24. I mean, it's not hard to do math here. The Aaron Nola contract looks to be one of the worst in baseball, but there will be teams that will go, he could be a frontline starter. He had an injury-plagued year. If they're in a big ballpark like a Seattle, all of a sudden it's like, well, the fly balls don't really bother us too much. Like we'll trade for him as a frontline starter. I mean, pitching is one of the things that teams are so desperate for, and a lot of teams will value Aaron Nola. Do I think they trade Aaron Nola in the offseason? I would be shocked, honestly. I think the front office, I think John Middleton likes the fact that Aaron Nola is a homegrown guy. They're going to keep him. I think they're going to let Ranger Suarez walk. I thought that was a mistake when they signed Aaron Nola and they chose Nola over Suarez. I still think it's a mistake, but I do think that they should entertain it because that would make the money, kind of evened up. I mean, you'll have to piecemeal together like 10 mil, but you're not having to pay $7 to $8 million for a Jordan Romano. His money's off the books because Jordan Romano was signed to be your closer. You already have your closer in Jhoan Duran, who will end up getting a raise, mind you, but still. You're going to have, you would think at least, a very affordable, cheap center fielder in Justin Crawford. I don't know why he's not up now. It's a joke. I know everyone's Jhoan Duran up. The Phillies still have an issue. They have one legitimate Major League Baseball outfielder, and that's Nick Castellanos. And other than that, they traded for right-handed Brandon Marsh. They have Brandon Marsh. They have Weston Wilson. They sent Johan Rojas down, even though he's, I think, better than all those guys. Well, he might not be better than Harrison Bader, but I think he's better than Brandon Marsh for sure, his defenses. And he adds an element that Brandon Marsh doesn't, which is speed on the base pass, but I'm like the only one that believes that. But all of this filibustering that I've done, and if you can't tell, I had a Coke. Not cocaine, but I had a Coke. So I'm like jittery. But all this filibustering is to say, like, if you're one of those people that is staying up late at night with a cold sweat wondering, oh my God, are we going to let Kyle Schwarber walk? No, they're not. Because John Middleton won't allow it. Kyle Schwarber is not only important on the field, he's equally as important in the locker room. And I think baseball is that one sport where locker room dynamic is so important because these guys are together 162 games, and all we hear about from Kyle Schwarber is what a great teammate he is. So to have that guy in the locker room and then producing on the field the way he is, there's no way in hell, no way John Middleton lets that dude walk. He will step in. He will fix a mistake if Dave Dombrowski is about to make it. And he will go, no, we're not playing this game. So I think if you're looking at it, JT Realmuto will be back and Kyle Schwarber will be back. Now is the part where I'm about to take a victory lap. Before I take that victory lap, I do need to do a mea culpa because, we got to even this out. We can't act like I'm always right. I'm certainly not. I was dead wrong about Kyle Schwarber. I didn't like that signing. When they made it, I thought it was the quintessential Phillies signing of like, okay, we're going to... Basically, I thought Kyle Schwarber was like what Max Kepler was. Like, oh, okay, he might have been promising at one point, but he's kind of cooked. Although, granted, Kyle Schwarber is way better than Max Kepler. But my point is, like, I didn't think Kyle Schwarber was all that great. And I thought they gave him a lot of money. And when I look at huge things that I was wrong about when it comes to the Phillies, it was like Zach Wheeler, because I didn't get that at all when they signed him. Certainly get it now. Thank God. And Kyle Schwarber. I wanted Nick Castellanos. They ended up getting both. Glad about it, obviously. But I was so wrong on Kyle Schwarber. I thought he was more of the player that the Cubs let go than the player that kind of regained his rhythm in Washington and then got traded to Boston and then signed for $20 million in Philly. I thought they overpaid. They didn't overpay. Like, he's been worth it. Now's the part where I do a victory lap. I need to know where all those people are that argued with me. Kyle Schwarber has to be hitting leadoff because he's comfortable. Because, boy, you look like a fucking idiot right now. And I haven't heard from any of them. I haven't seen that argument. I mean, if you're one of those, like, comment section, defend it. Because I thought it was dumb when we were arguing about it. I thought it was dumb for 3 seasons that we argued about it. Like, you have your best power hitter, a guy that is, his power is on par with Ryan Howard during that stretch, and you're guaranteeing 25% of his at-bats are going to have a 1 RBI opportunity. That is idiotic. But fans were pulling hamstrings and falling over themselves to defend Kyle Schwarber in the leadoff spot. He's comfortable. Meanwhile, he's hitting a $170. And I would make the argument, like, let's get him uncomfortable. If he's hitting like 190, crazy, let's get him uncomfortable. Well, now they bumped him down to the 2 spot. Shocking, he is leading Major League Baseball in all of RBIs. He's having his best season ever, 40 home runs. And I don't hear the Kyle Schwarber needs to hit leadoff anymore. I'm just wondering, where did those fans go? Look, I'm not right all the time, as we just stated. I don't even think my record on being right is all that great. But in this case, I heard it for 3 fucking seasons. 3 seasons from you people. Oh my God, well, look at their record when Kyle Schwarber is hitting leadoff. He's comfortable. He's comfortable? Imagine back in the day, Ryan Howard sliding into the number 1 hole. Like, we would have eviscerated Charlie Manuel. What you're seeing should have happened for 4 seasons. He never should have hit leadoff. It's dumb. It's the new age analytics. It's the people that are going to keep Jimmy Rollins out of the Hall of Fame when he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. But it's stupid. I'd argue that Kyle Schwarber should be hitting 3rd or 4th. Like, again, he's your best power hitter. But they would have these stupid arguments of like, well, they like starting the game off 1-0. Do you think a pitcher cares? Pitchers would start the game off against Kyle Schwarber having nobody on base. And they were looking over at the Phillies locker or the dugout, and they're going, thanks. Appreciate it. Because they knew. They knew that they could have, a guy, 2 guys, 3 guys on. He had a grand slam tonight. 6 RBIs. But that wasn't happening with the first at bat of the game because no, he's comfortable and look at their record. It wasn't that they were a good baseball team. No, it was look at their record all because Kyle Schwarber is hitting leadoff. The dumbest argument I think we've ever had as a fan base. And the reason I'm so animated about it was because there weren't many people like me who were making it. There was, like, I was in the minority. The majority of people we're drinking this Kyle Schwarber leadoff Kool-Aid, and I'll never let it go. Because I heard for 3 seasons these stupid asinine arguments, I'm never letting it go. I will always be doing this victory lap. I'll be obnoxious about it. I'm sure people are smashing that unfollow button. Smash! Smash, smash, smash! I sound like the hatchet guy. The hatchet killer that was actually caught in Philadelphia. Smash, smash, smash. I would appreciate it if you smash the subscribe button. That'd be cool. If you don't, I understand why, because that was kind of insufferable for the last 5 minutes. But still, when you're right, sometimes you got to remind a fool. But yeah, you guys know where the buttons are. Like, dislike, all that. But if you are one of those people, like this past weekend was Major League Baseball's Hall of Fame induction weekend up in Cooperstown, where Major League Baseball just inducts new members into the Hall of Fame. We did have some former Phillies, Billy Wagner. I don't acknowledge that dude. And then you also had Dick Allen, as well as Ichiro and CC Sabathia. Real quick, let me just say that the fact that Ichiro had to wait a year is an absolute joke. And I could not love his Hall of Fame speech more. The fact that he took a shot at that idiot writer who should have his vote revoked, love it. Because he's right. Like, when you factor in his Japanese stats and his American stats, the dude's the all-time hit king. Like, we forget that. He came over, I think, at the age of 28 or 29. To act like Ichiro wouldn't have broke Pete Rose's record if he had just started in Major League Baseball is ridiculous. That dude is a specimen. And he's one of those players that I'm sad my child will not be able to grow up and watch. It sucks that he played the majority of his career in Seattle because I live on the East Coast, but the dude's a gem. But this upcoming weekend is alumni weekend for the Phillies, where they will induct members to their Wall of Fame. Now, unlike Cooperstown, the Phillies do this every year. So every year, they're inducting somebody new. And one of the things I love about Major League Baseball is they won't induct somebody every year. This isn't football where it's like, well, we got to induct 8 members this year. Like, that's ridiculous. Major League Baseball sometimes will induct 1, none, or they'll do, the veteran committee. You know, I mean, if no one's worthy of the Hall, they won't get in. The Phillies are different. I mean, they got to sell tickets, so yeah, okay. Like, there's enough good players where they're not going to be in the Hall of Fame, but let's acknowledge what they've done for the franchise. And this upcoming weekend, you have two people being inducted that are very important to the Phillies franchise. You have Ed Wade, the former general manager of the Phillies, and you have James Calvin Rollins, Jimmy Rollins. And this is where this video really starts, because while Jimmy Rollins is getting inducted into the Phillies Wall of Fame, Jimmy Rollins should one day enjoy his own speech in Cooperstown. And if you want to argue with me, I have the stats to back it up. Before I get into it, though, I do want to talk about Ed Wade, because Ed Wade was my GM growing up. Like, that was the guy that was running the organization when I was coming into my own as a Phillies fan. And what he did for this organization, I think gets forgotten by a lot of fans, and it'll be, you know, brought to the surface more this upcoming weekend. But the drafting of the core for a World Series team was Ed Wade. But more importantly than that, not trading away that core. You know, I mean, at one point, and I'm sure this will get brought up, because there's nothing more that GMs love to talk about than the good move they didn't make. You know, if you notice, that's a really popular thing amongst GMs. They'll always remind you, oh yeah, we had a chance to get this, veteran player who was 36, former All-Star, but they wanted us to give up a young pitcher. His name was Roy Halladay, and we said no. Convenient. Billy King loves lying about how he didn't get cold feet with Tracy McGrady, even though he did. GMs love doing that. I have respect for Ed Wade, because Ed Wade's the only GM I've ever heard in my life actually admit he took a worse deal, and that was the Brad Lidge deal. He is on record as saying we had two offers for Brad Lidge. The one was the deal that we took, which was Jeff Geary, Mike Costanzo, and Taylor Buchholz. I believe that was a trade. Michael Bourne, Jeff Geary, and Mike Costanzo. That was the trade. Taylor Buchholz was in the Billy Wagner trade. Or we had this other offer for a former really, really good pitcher, but was coming off a bad year. That pitcher was Cliff Lee. And he's like, yeah, I probably should have taken the Cliff Lee deal, considering Mike Costanzo never amounted to much. Michael Bourne's a really, really good player for Houston. But Brad Lidge, goes a perfect season in 2008 and closes out a World Series. So I have respect for Ed Wade. But he had a deal on the table where he wanted to get Barry Zito. And the Oakland A's at the time wanted Chase Utley, Michael Bourne, and Ryan Madsen, I believe. And he said, no, that's too much. And the Phillies were really close to a playoff berth for the first time in more than a decade. And he was like, no, I'm good. There is a trade that does not get talked about enough, which was he actually offered Ryan Howard at the time, who was in AAA, mashing home runs. But he offered Ryan Howard to the Tampa Bay Rays for a young center fielder named Rocco Baldelli. At the time, it would have made sense. The Phillies needed a center fielder. They had this Jim Thome guy. They didn't really need Ryan Howard. And Rocco Baldelli was really good. He's a former 5th overall pick, and he looked like he was going to be a future All-Star. And he had shown flashes and all that. Unfortunately for Rocco Baldelli, his career was derailed by a rare degenerative disease, I believe. And then Ryan Howard went on to win an MVP. That, by the way, is per Jason Stark. Like, that lives rent-free in my mind. So I have a lot of respect for Ed Wade, because he held off on trading some of this core that really ended up winning the World Series, even though the Ryan Howard trade he offered and kind of just lucked out. Let's get on to Jimmy Rollins and why I will throw hands for Jimmy Rollins. Why I am convinced that Jimmy Rollins should be in Cooperstown one day. Okay? And I realize that time is running out. I think he's got 6 years left on the ballot. He's not gaining momentum like he probably should for somebody that is Cooperstown bound, like Chase Utley, actually. But fine, whatever. Here's my argument, okay? And I'm so passionate about this, and some people know this, that I keep a list in my wallet. Because I think we have this thing in society where people love arguing about the Hall of Very Good. Oh, he's a Hall of Very Good member. He's not a Hall of Famer. And when you think about it, there's very few players in baseball where you immediately go like, he's a Hall of Famer. And those players are first ballot Hall of Famers. Like Mike Trouts, the Ohtanis, the Verlanders. Like first ballot Hall of Famers. You forget that the Hall of Fame is also filled up with guys that took 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times on the ballot. And they're Hall of Famers, but it just took a little bit of time to get them there. And I'm not arguing that Jimmy Rollins is the first ballot Hall of Famer, because he's not. I'm arguing that he is a Hall of Famer only if you match him up against other Hall of Famers. That's all. That's my argument right there. Okay? You don't think Jimmy Rollins is a Hall of Famer? Fine. That's your problem. Just match his stats up against other shortstops in the Hall of Fame, and it tells a different story. So I got so sick of defending Jimmy Rollins because I think Phillies fans, they have this thing where it's like they don't want to be too biased, and this is probably for every fan base. They don't want to be too biased, so it's like, okay, whoa, we don't want to be homers. So they go the other way. And the Jimmy Rollins argument was always one that I thought they went too far the other way. I got sick of arguing with them, so I literally wrote down the reasoning so that anytime I said Jimmy Rollins is a Hall of Famer and I got, come on, man, really? I would just whip this out and put the argument to rest. So let me read them off. And actually, as I pulled this out of my wallet, because it sits in my wallet, I did notice there is a slight problem. One of the pieces is missing. You can literally see on the back, right? Like, it's just, this thing has been folded and pressed in my wallet, and then this part is, I gotta put this in. So you're not gonna get the when you compare him to other Hall of Famers argument. I apologize, okay? But let's start out with Jimmy Rollins, just his stats in general, because at the end of the day, that is the Hall of Fame. Like it or not, baseball is the ultimate number sport. The Hall of Fame, it's a numbers compilation game. He's got it. Okay. 2,275 games played, 1,421 runs scored, 2,455 hits, 511 doubles, 115 triples, 936 RBIs, primarily, you have to remember this, out of the leadoff spot, 470 stolen bases, 231 home runs. Again, guys like 5'11", smashing 231 home runs as a shortstop. 1 MVP. 1 Silver Slugger. He's a member of the 20-20-20-20 club, meaning 20 doubles, triples, home runs, and stolen bases. He is a 4-time Gold Glover, a 3-time All-Star. By the way, this is why I don't really take account in the All-Star thing. The year he won MVP, he was not an All-Star. But he's a 3-time All-Star. He is the only player in Major League Baseball history with a 20-30-40 season. 20 doubles, 30 triples, 40 stolen bases, that obviously being the MVP year in 2007. Now, when you look at the franchise of the Phillies, they've been around for a little bit, 1883, a couple years, right? He ranks first in franchise history in hits, at-bats, and doubles. He ranks second in franchise history in games played and stolen bases. The guy that is first on that list is some dude named Mike Schmidt, and then the third guy is Richie Ashburn. I don't know if you've heard of him. Both guys are in the Hall of Fame. So sandwiched in the games played thing is Jimmy Rollins. Stolen bases, by the way, the total bases is 3,655. He is second on the franchise list for that. The third in that is Ed Delahanty. Another one in the Hall of Fame. So he's ahead of Ed Delahanty when you look at total bases, he's second. Mike Schmidt's first. He is second. Ed Delahanty's third. Again, he's sandwiched between 2 Hall of Famers. He ranks third in franchise history in runs scored with 1,325, and he also ranks third in franchise history in triples with 111. You got to remember, because the Phillies were around for so long, you've got guys who were compiling triples because they just were fast and they were playing, carpenters. But so the fact that he is third in franchise history is actually really, really impressive when you consider, I think Ed Delahanty's probably first. I don't know who's second, actually. That's on me. Okay. When you just look at the next level stats, okay, because that's just the franchise of the Phillies. Look at the next level stats of why Jimmy Rollins is a Hall of Famer. Rollins is just one of 7 shortstops with 2,000 hits, 700 extra base hits. Okay, I can see you're not convinced. All right, 1 of 7. Okay, how about this? Rollins is just one of 5 shortstops with 2,000 hits and 400 stolen bases. 1 of 5. I can tell you're not convinced. Okay, how about this? Only Rollins and some dude named Honus Wagner have 2,000 hits, 700 extra base hits, and 400 stolen bases. I did look this up. Honus Wagner is in the Hall of Fame. Yeah, believe it or not. Old player, but he's in the Hall of Fame. Rollins is the only shortstop ever to win an MVP award in addition to 4 Gold Gloves. Among shortstops with at least 10 years of service time, Rollins ranks second in fielding percentage behind some guy named Omar Vizquel, who was pretty good with a glove. Now, I can tell you right now, my biggest argument for why Jimmy Rollins is in the Hall of Fame, and I can't give it to you just because, again, the paper, I don't know what happened in this part, but I just know this going off the dome. The biggest argument is the fact that Barry Larkin's in the Hall of Fame. And Barry Larkin was in the Hall of Fame, I want to say probably the class of 2012 maybe. And when you look at Barry Larkin's career compared to Jimmy Rollins is better than Barry Larkin. Statistically across the board, he's better than Barry Larkin. He's got as many MVPs. He's got more Gold Gloves. You know, when you factor in what Jimmy Rollins did on both sides of the plate, the defense and the offense, because that is so important. When you factor that in, if Barry Larkin's in the Hall of Fame, Jimmy Rollins is in the Hall of Fame. And if you don't believe me on that, Barry Larkin is quoted as saying that exact statement. If I'm in, then he's got to be in. When you look at during the timeline when Jimmy Rollins played, and you look at the great shortstops, it's Alex Rodriguez, who eventually switched to third base, but still Alex Rodriguez, who take away the steroid stuff, Hall of Famer, Derek Jeter, and then it's Jimmy Rollins. For that stretch of time, Jimmy Rollins was the best shortstop in the National League, period, point blank, for a long, considerable time. With his production, the best shortstop in the National League. Consistently the straw that stirred the drink. But factor in also the leadership. And I don't think this gets talked about enough because in baseball, as I said, it's a sport of numbers game. It's a number compilation game. When you look at his leadership, and this is something that I think will end up hurting him because the stat nerds out there, they haven't created XVLORP for leadership. But the fact that this dude comes out after coming one game away from making the playoffs for the first time in his career in 2006 and says, yeah, I think we're the team to beat. And of course, you know, the Mets are like, we won the division. I don't know what you're talking. You haven't won since '93. It's been a minute. And he goes, no, I think we're the team to beat. He says it to motivate his teammates so that they believe, no, we're really good. And of course, everybody remembers in 2007. 7 games back, 17 left to play. Who put the team on his back? Jimmy Rollins. Last game of the season when they needed that win. Who starts out the game with his 20th triple? Jimmy Rollins. The fact that he said it and then backed it up with an MVP season, I don't think it's talked. Guess whose phone died as I was recording that? It's me. Yeah. To put a bow on all the Jimmy Rollins talk, though, as I mentioned earlier, the Phillies have been around since 1883. Their first season ticket holders were Civil War vets. Like, let that sink in. So we're talking about a storied franchise. Look, they've only won 2 World Series, but still, that is a franchise that's been around for a long, long time. You cannot tell the history of the Philadelphia Phillies without talking about James Calvin Rollins. You can't do it. He's the greatest shortstop in franchise history, and it's not close. But if you want to make the argument of like, okay, Pat, well, you can't talk about the Philadelphia Phillies history without talking about the greatest first baseman of all time, Ryan Howard. Fine. You're right. And Ryan Howard's not a Hall of Famer. He was on that trajectory until injuries took his career. But, okay, fine. I don't think you can talk about the history of baseball without talking about Jimmy Rollins. Because of what I mentioned earlier. Because of that stretch where Jimmy was the best shortstop in the National League. And I don't think it was particularly close. What he added on the field, off the field, offensively, defensively, he was it. He was the guy. You're not going to give me Troy Tulowitzki. You're not going to give me Jose Reyes. In the National League, it was Jimmy Rollins. Period, point blank. And during that stretch of baseball, and we're talking like, what, 2006. We'll start at 2006. To 2012, Jimmy Rollins was a major, major part of Major League Baseball. So I don't think you can tell the history of the sport without mentioning Jimmy Rollins. And that alone should get him in the Hall of Fame. The fact that he was so important to the sport during that period of time. Again, I think we get lost in the whole like, well, is the Hall of very good? Because in our mind we go, okay, he was really good, but he's not a Hall of Famer. And that distinction, the Hall of Fame distinction, is really only for the first ballot guys. And in Ichiro's case, the second ballot guys, because some writers have a stick up their ass. But when you look at the history of baseball, it's littered with more guys that got in on the third, fourth, fifth, sixth try than the first ballot guys or the second ballot guys. I think Chase Utley will get in before Jimmy Rollins gets in. I think Chase might even get up there on the stage and make a pitch that, you know, his mate, his double play partner, deserves to be in, because he does. Because while Chase Utley did the little things that writers loved, right? He didn't really talk, was a robot out there, kept his head down, hustled. His IQ was off the charts when it came to baseball. The work ethic was absolutely there. And of course, like the advanced metrics that the nerds love. When you look at who the leader of that team was, though, Chase might have led by example on the field at times, sure, no question. But the leader of the team was Jimmy Rollins. And I don't think any Phillies fan or Phillies player, for that matter, will argue that. He was so important to that team. And I really think he should get in the Hall of Fame. I hope that he does. He deserves it. Again, I'm not here to argue that he's first or second ballot. I mean, obviously that time has passed. And I think it would probably come down to that last year. But I think when you look at the history of the game and what he was able to do in that time period, yeah, the advanced metrics aren't there. But just think about the eye test. Think about what he did. Think about the fact that when you look at some of these stats, he's the only guy to ever do it. The 20, 30, 40 season. You know? You saw that one time in your life, and it was when Jimmy Rollins did it. So yeah, there's my pitch. If you want to argue about it, please go find a wall or a cardboard cutout, because they will be better listeners than me. I am dug in on this. I will die on this hill. And if he doesn't get in, I will die on the hill still. And I will be screaming from the rooftops of the Veterans Committee or whatever the hell they're calling it now. The Golden Era, I don't know. But whatever they're calling it now, I'll be screaming for them to right what the writers did wrong. The writers recently have gone more analytical than anything else, because I think as the old guard moves out of baseball and the young guard moves in, the young guard is more of an analytically driven, you know, writer's guild, if you will. And then the old guard is more of the eye test and, you know, that the good with the bad. I mean, they can be a finicky group. Like if you didn't treat them right, oh, well, you're off the, you know, I'm not voting you in. But I think if Jimmy Rollins had come around 10 years earlier, this wouldn't even be a question. The writers would have voted him in. Because you have more analytically driven writers nowadays, they're looking at the advanced metrics and not thinking about all of the encompassing factor of what he meant to not only the franchise, but baseball itself. There you go. Now's the part where I beg you to hit a subscribe button, because I need 1,000 of them. I don't have 1,000. I need 1,000 so I can start getting paid. As soon as I hit 1,000, I'll stop begging. I will. But, you know, right now that's important. Hit that little button. I'm not asking you to like. I'm not asking you to comment, share, none of that. You know where those buttons are. You can do it if you want. I just need subscribers. Go Phillies.